All right. Hello and welcome to the Soul Wisdom Exchange. I'm Regina Curtis, the owner and founder of At Matry. I'm a soul wisdom mentor and a soul sourced business strategist. And I love having conversations with people about their ways of knowing and being, how you receive information, how you process it, how you express and integrate that information as well. And the way that that wisdom comes to and through you, that's what I call our soul wisdom languages. So I have a guest here with me today, and we're going to be talking about her soul wisdom languages and how she uses that in her work and life. So, Tonya, it's so nice to have you here with me today. Why don't you give us a little bit of information about yourself and just introduce yourself?
So I am Tonya Rutter. I am an empowerment and confidence coach. I'm also a soul wealth mentor. And I really help people in getting wealth in their lives, which wealth is so much more than money. We tend to think of money meaning wealth, but it's really all areas of life. It's your health, it's your relationships, it's just everything. So it's really empowering people to have the confidence to live life to the fullest in all areas of life.
That's just so beautiful. Um, Many years ago, I read this book called Wealth by the man who started Mind Body Green, and he spelled it Wellth. And the whole book was about really finding that wealth in all areas of your life, in your health, in with money and finances, and in your body and in your relationships. And so I love that concept that wealth is far more than it has to do just with our finances. And yet, that is a really integrated and important part of who we are and how we show up as well.
Exactly. I do something called the money pulse. And what I've noticed is that money is so integral to who we are
Yeah,
in all areas of our lives. Money affects every area of our life. It affects our health, it affects our relationships, it affects, our work. It affects so much. People stress over money, you know,
oh, yeah.
they
People stress
do.
over money. That is a very true statement. And I think even when we do work regularly, right? Like I know I
Hmm.
personally do a lot of mindset work with money and with wealth in general and prosperity. And yet no one's perfect, right? We all have um, our up days and our down days, and we have history that sometimes we're aware of and sometimes we're not, right? And even that history
Hmm.
might go beyond our lived experience into our ancestral lines and into past lives. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about, explaining what is the money pulse and how does that information come to you?
Okay. So the money pulse, when you think about it, if you have a heartbeat, you have a money pulse. So not only do humans have a money pulse, but even animals have a money pulse. So what that is a money pulse is really a money system. So, our society has a money system that has been like this old money system based on treachery and greed and stuff like that. There's a new money system coming in that is really based on, graciousness, giving, and love.
Hmm.
That is also the money system that animals have as well. Animals give gifts to each other. They don't give a gift to each other based on, oh, I'm doing this just, out of leverage to try and get something out of someone else. That's not why they do that.
Animals are so fascinating.
Yeah.
I love studying them. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is really us as a society getting back to that money system
Hmm.
of graciousness, giving, and love, and joy and peace.
Hmm.
And because that is the new money DNA coming in, what I do is I bring in that new money DNA to people. So, what is the money pulse really? Like I said, if you have a heartbeat, you have a money pulse. So, the money pulse is in sync with your heartbeat.
Hmm.
Money itself is on the same vibrational level as love. So
Yeah.
it's looking at money in a completely different way. It's looking at money as love. which is a concept that is not easy for people to come across. A lot of people see money as a tool.
Hmm.
You get some who see money as something evil. Others see money as something that is needed in order to survive,
Yeah.
rather than seeing it as love.
And how does that actually show up for you? What does it look like or sound like or feel like? Like, how do you
So,
receive that information?
what happened? The way this happened, it was a couple years ago. I was like, I need money. Okay. I mean, we all think that, right? How
Yes,
many times have you thought, I
I've thought
need
that
money?
today. Yes.
Yeah.
We all think that.
So I was sitting there and I was like, God, I was like, money, just come to me, just come to me. And she did. She like came to me and she just started talking to me. I'm like, oh my God, money is sentient.
Yeah.
And I realized then she had this message for me, and she's a goddess.
Mm-hmm.
Money is a goddess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started doing work with money. I started, the way the money pulse came around, I was working with another coach, and we were talking about her money issues. And I said, well, your money pulse is broken. She said, what the hell is a money pulse? And at that moment, I had not done any work with the money pulse before that. It was just something I just knew, like I could hear her money pulse and I could see the pulse. It looks like, on a graph, it looks like a pulse.
I
But I
love
could see
it.
where it was broken. And I said, well, everything just came to me. I said, your money pulse is attached to your heart, and you have a lot of guilt around money, and so it's broken right here, and so we need to fix that. And it just all just intuitively came.
I love.
And yeah, and a lot of her guilt actually came from prior lives. And that's a thing, I used to be a past life expert. I'm still a past life expert, but that's how I started out, past life
Yeah.
expert.
Used to do
And
that
again,
more specifically, right? But now it's just
yes,
part of what you do. Okay.
yes, yes. I used to, it was everything was past life stuff. And what I would do is I would just all of a sudden be transported into somebody's past life. It was totally unexpected. I could just be talking to somebody, and boom, I was in their past life. And I experienced, their death and, how they died. I could feel everything. So I know what it feels like to die in so many different ways. But now, I can see how that past life integrates into this lifetime and the things that have happened in the past life. How if you have issues like with relationships, if you have issues with health, if you have issues with money, I can see how that all ties in from your prior lives. And then, probably within the last 2 years, I've been doing more of the generational work as well, which, when you think about it, past lives and generational work, it's memories. Our DNA is memories. That's what it is. It's
Yeah.
all memories. So what I'm really doing is I'm traveling through memories,
Mm,
and I'm seeing, where did this occur? Like this issue with money, especially if it's familial.
mhm.
So I worked with people before where, oh, maybe it was 5 generations ago, great great grandma had an issue and it was passed down to you.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah. So
I love it.
that's kind of how it all comes out.
That idea of traveling through memory. So, I love talking with you about how you do your work because there's a lot of synchronicity in how things show up for me as well. And I want to pull up um, this picture here for a second. And if you're listening only on audio, you won't be able to see it. But for those who are watching on video, you'll be able to see this is one of my intuitive channeled artworks, and it is called The Soul of Money. And it definitely has a goddess like energy. And so when Tonya and I first met, one of the first conversations that we had, she said, I understand money as love. It is the same energy frequency as love. And I was like, whew, right away, I like felt in my heart, I was like, that was a yes. Like, absolutely, there's a connection here. And then she started talking about the money pulse, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'd never heard anyone else talk about that before. And yet when this artwork came through, if you're looking at it, you can see, I'm going to turn it kind of to its side here for a second. I can never figure out this camera thing. But this pulse right here is, it shows up both in the reverse and kind of in this like light and shadow way. And when this message was coming through, I was like, there's a heartbeat um, to the energy of money. And I was like, oh, it's alive. It's a sentient being. It is very much, yeah, like a lot of the things that you were explaining and even just explained, that message came through. And so if you're watching on YouTube, you can actually go on, no matter where you're watching, but you can see a video where I read the message that came through with this, and you can learn all about it. But it just, the way that you experience money and the way that you receive messages from money is so resonant for me. And that goddess energy is so in alignment with how I understand the soul of money, right? Like when you think of the archetype of a goddess, what what images does that bring through, right? What feelings does that bring through? And it's this empowerment, right? When you talk about a goddess, generally speaking, it's a little bit different energy than when we talk about royalty, right? Or
Mhm.
and so I'd love to explore with you, Tonya, what is the difference when I say those two words for you? Like, what is the difference between royalty and goddess energy?
Well, I think for one, royalty, they don't really have a choice in their life path, you know. So they are really, you know, they're controlled by everyone outside of them. They're controlled by their name, really, and their image. They have this image they have to uphold. So there's really, they don't have, you know, this true autonomy. A goddess does. A goddess is powerful. A
Mhm.
goddess can be anything she wants to be, anything, at any moment, at any time. She's not constrained by what society thinks of her or anything.
Yeah. And it has nothing to
So,
do with money, right? Like
no, it has
oftentimes
nothing to do with money.
of royalty, and it's like, oh, the royal jewels and the royal, castle
Mm,
or palace, and there's so much. And I'm not saying that royalty is bad, right? Because we have
no.
an energy of royalty. I mean, my name means queen, right? And in
Mm,
some ways, this is something that I think it's always interesting. Names are fascinating to me because talk about passing down energy, right? Like our parents choose our names for us, and that's the label then we go by. It becomes our identity, but we don't always choose that identity, right? There's so
mm,
much built into that sometimes we're aware of it and sometimes we're not. Maybe it is family lineage, a name that's passed down through our family lineage. But if you look at that energetically, right, there's so much tied to that name in our history. And like you said, it lives in our cells. And
mm,
yet, a goddess energy is generally, goddesses are named in harmony, right, with nature, or in with the energy of empowerment, the energy of that wealth that has nothing to do with finances. It has everything to
right.
do with internal power.
Yes. Whereas royalty, you know, they're so focused on, you know, their money power,
Hmm.
you know. So it's, let's get, you know, all this land.
Hmm.
Let's have these buildings. And so yeah, they have a lot of generational wealth.
And
But
all
if
the
they
trauma that
didn't,
comes with it.
yes, and all the trauma that comes with it. But if they didn't have those titles, if they didn't have that generational wealth, what would they have?
Yeah.
You
Right.
know?
And I think that's where a lot of fear comes in, and that energy to then dominate or maintain dominance, right? And I think we're talking a little bit historically here, but it shows up in today's world as well,
Hmm.
in many ways, even outside of royalty. Like that's one of
Hmm.
those very um, visible experiences of it, or examples, I guess, of how we look at wealth as humans. But I want to come back to animals again for a second, because something that's really fascinating about animals is that animals don't actually experience trauma. And if you do any kind of like somatic healing training, you may come across, or reading about somatic work, you may come across experiences of, examples of how animals really process and work with their nervous system that's very different than humans. And I was actually just reading this morning in a book called Call of the Wild, and she was explaining about an example of, like a bunny rabbit being stalked by a wolf. And the bunny rabbit goes into freeze mode and actually shuts down its body. Like the natural response from the nervous system is to shut down, like play dead, right? And one of the things that she said when she was explaining this, the author, was that to say to play dead, right, implies that there's something logical that you're doing, like you're like, oh, I'm going to lay down now and pretend I'm dead. But this is actually a response from the nervous system, a natural response from the nervous system that shuts everything down, goes into freeze mode, and makes the body limp. So when this fox or wolf or whatever it was comes up and tries to attack, right, the predator prey relationship, they pick up the bunny and shake it around and try to find out. I was watching my cat do this with their toy the other day. They pick and they shake it. And I never knew. I always thought that the reason why, this is going to get gruesome for a second here, but like I thought they shook it to like snap the neck, right? Or like to kill their prey. But actually, it's because of that nervous system response. If they shake it, then they, is it alive or not, right? If it doesn't have a reaction, a predator want to eat dead prey. They want to kill the prey. And so that's where that reaction comes from. But then, okay, so they're limp, right? They've gone limp. Their nervous system kicks in, their sympathetic nervous system, and they're in freeze mode. The prey says, okay, I'm not interested anymore because there's no game here, right? There's nothing in it. And so they leave it. Then the bunny jumps up, shakes it off, and goes about its business. And the thing that she said that I thought was really interesting is then, the bunny stays in the field and does their thing and like continues eating and doing whatever bunnies do. They don't sit around nervously behind a tree looking for that prey again all day. And that's what trauma does in our bodies, right? We have that reaction to, it's going to happen again. And I think, when talking about the money pulse, if we don't have the ability to complete the cycle in our nervous system, because that's what's happening, right? You go through go into freeze, right? And then your parasympathetic nervous system comes back in, calms everything down, you shake it off and go about your business. But as humans, we don't always have the ability to do that. And we do also, well, it's not that we don't have the ability, we don't have the awareness sometimes that we need to do that, right? The space and acceptance to do things like that, especially in public, right? Like, what if we were like sitting here and all of a sudden thought, oh, I have some trauma around my childhood, money situation. What if I just got up and like started shaking it off? What would that do? How would people react to that, right? Like, that's not always acceptable. And sometimes we don't even know that we're experiencing the trauma because it's so normalized in our bodies.
Yes, it's normalized in the body. And I think sometimes too that society says, oh, this is normal. So
Yeah.
you grow up with that thought that, oh, this is just normal. We're just supposed to be oppressed. We're just supposed to not know that this is not okay.
Right. Yeah. So the trauma response and suppressing it is normalized, as is the trauma originator, right? The reason
Yes.
we're experiencing it, the circumstances through which are causing the trauma, which then just amplifies it, right? And not only normalizes it, but it amplifies it and it makes it that much worse. And our bodies are trying to fight against that, but it creates this tension of, um, I think it's tension, but also just creates exhaustion because at some point our bodies are like, well, hell, I don't know. Like, let's just go to sleep. I can't figure
That's
it
so
out.
true. Well, we oftentimes, okay, we have four minds, all right? We have four minds that we work with, and oftentimes we only work with two,
Mm,
okay? So we have the rational mind, that's that human part of us
yeah.
that, and the thing is that the rational mind only knows what it's been told. It doesn't know anything else. It only knows what it's been told. And then there's the gut mind.
Mm,
You get that gut feeling about certain things. So the gut mind is based off of past experience that, past experience from this lifetime, past experiences from prior lives, past experiences that have been passed down to you. That
hmm
is the gut mind. And then you have the quantum mind. The quantum mind, that is consciousness,
hmm
and that's that part of us that we don't necessarily live in that much simply because living in the quantum mind means the rational mind giving up control to the quantum mind. Now, as humans, we don't like to give up control of stuff.
Because that's how we identify. That's how we've been taught to identify is
Yes,
with our rational mind, right?
exactly, exactly. And then you have the heart mind. That heart mind, that is your soul. That is what you follow. That's that feeling, that knowing that you have inside you of when you're going down the right path. Like for me, we were talking about, how do I know
Yeah.
when I'm going down a path I should be going down? I literally feel it in my heart. It's almost like this pull, like it's pulling me towards a certain direction. So, and again, it's that rational mind giving up control to the heart because your heart has a brain. It does. Your heart has a brain. So when
Yeah.
you can connect those two, the rational mind and the heart, then the heart becomes the new brain and you start thinking with your heart more. So it's really about allowing the rational mind to take a back seat. Now that doesn't mean, don't think the rational mind because we
It
do
has
need
a
to think with our
purpose as
rational
well.
mind.
Yes.
It does. It does. Especially with everyday life,
Yes.
with, like your finances and things like that. Just you need the rational mind in those things. But when it comes to, making decisions, we're using all four minds. We
That's
don't
what alignment
necessarily,
is, right? When we
yes,
talk
that
about
is
alignment,
alignment. Yes.
it's all of those minds, all of that consciousness coming into agreement with each
Hmm.
other, right? Like, have you
Yes.
ever had that experience of, um, I've heard people say before, like, well, my mind says one thing and my heart says another, or I have this gut
Yes.
feeling that it doesn't seem right, but it looks right, it sounds right, right? Like they're not
Yep.
in alignment with each other. And so
Exactly.
often I hear people say, like, oh, it's a full body yes. What does that actually mean? That there's alignment between those consciousness, those minds.
Mhm. Mhm. And a lot of times, we are focused more in the rational mind and the gut mind. Those are the two minds that take precedence over the heart mind and the quantum mind.
Mhm.
But again, it's really about utilizing all four minds and, not just becoming aware of all four minds, but using all four minds.
Yeah. I have an exercise that I do with people occasionally when they're experiencing some kind of disconnect, right? That misalignment
Hmm.
of, I don't know what to believe. Um, I will have them ask their mind, their heart, and their gut. Now, who's asking? That conscious mind, right? So that's using
Hmm.
all four of those minds. And so I'll walk them through where we tune into their body, we get really present, connecting with that clear mind, that clear consciousness, and then asking the same question to those different areas. And we do it one at a time and we really allow that answer to come through before we move on, moving consciousness then into the next area, really connecting with it, asking the question, receiving, and then again to the third area. And then I'll ask them when they're done going through that process, what were the answers and did they differ? And oftentimes they do, especially if they are experiencing that misalignment, and I'll ask, which one resonates more with you, which one is true. And usually they can identify, this one feels like it's trying to, they all have a purpose, right? My mind will
Mm-hmm.
try to keep me safe. My gut will try to look at past experiences. My heart will tell me where I want to go, right? And then we
Mm-hmm.
explore, okay, what can you learn from these three answers, and how do we bring them into alignment? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's it's a really great practice that you can do on your own too, right? Like I do that for
Mm-hmm.
myself. I'll check in. Okay, brain, what are we thinking here? Okay, heart, what's going on? What is my body feeling? Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's a practice that is really helpful for sure.
Yes. Yes. Especially when, like, a lot lately, a lot of, I guess, influence has been coming across with the gut mind, and people are saying, oh, listen to your gut, listen to your gut. Again, the gut is based on past experience, not, going towards the future. It's bringing all this information from the past.
Hmm.
So you have to listen to the heart as well.
Yeah.
It can't just be the gut. Now the gut, again, the gut too is also designed to keep you safe. The rational mind is designed to keep you safe. So is the gut.
Hmm. Well, both of them are actually, I always talk about the brain as kind of like the supercomputer, right? To say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's always scanning. What are
Mm-hmm.
experiences? It's like doing that data processing.
Yep.
And in business, we've been taught to do this also, right? Do your field research and find out, or your market research, right? If you want to put out a new program, make sure to look for all the other programs that are similar to it and how they've had a response, whether they were successful or not, and then look at the numbers. And I had, that was my role in my job for a long time because I created new programs. And I was, I wasn't, what would the word I would use for this? There were often times that I would have a very different intuitive feeling. And I'm not going to say gut feeling because it was all of those, right? Like it was an intuitive feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, based on previous experience, but also based on what I was just receiving guidance, what was resonating with me, and what I was feeling in my heart, what I was, envisioning with my third eye, and all of the parts of me. I would have this intuitive feeling that this program is going to work or it's not going to work, and that sometimes aligned with the numbers and sometimes it didn't. And I found that I was more well received if my answer aligned with the numbers. Other people would believe me. But if I came in and said, this is not going to work, or this is totally going to work, and the numbers weren't there, I could often not gain the trust needed to move something forward, even though I knew with all my soul and body and mind that this was going to be, a good thing or a bad thing. Unfortunately, I had more experiences to prove that right with programs not being a good fit than the opposite, because like I said, I couldn't get the I would have that feeling of this isn't going to work, and it wouldn't. And then I could say I knew this wasn't going to work even though the numbers were there, and people are like, sure, you can say that now that you have the history, right? But does that work in the opposite? Well, I couldn't get the proof to prove it because I couldn't get the funding to actually run the programs, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's when you are only judging something also from that analytical mind, then it's really hard to prove it, right? To prove something on paper, because this isn't, we're not looking at case studies of what has already happened. We're looking at all of it, right? Past, present,
Mm-hmm.
future, all in one.
Yeah. And that is something that can be so hard, that can really make people stop in their tracks, where on one hand their intuition is telling them move in this direction, but the numbers are telling them no, keep going down this other path. And so there's this kind of warring going on in the body. And unfortunately, that can cause a lot of, issues, because you're
Yes.
not in alignment. You're
Yeah.
not going in the direction that your body is telling you to go. You're going in the direction that society is telling you to go.
Yeah. And it does. It creates misalignment in the body. So I'd love to I'd love to give an experience of how how the money pulse relates with that, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
if we are I don't know, I'm just getting called to like ask you to tune in and give us
yeah,
an experience of the money pulse. It can be something that you're picking up from me, something that you're picking up from someone who will watch this at some point. But just, I'd love to see it in action.
yeah.
Are you
So
open
I
to
am, yeah. And, before you even said that, I was already getting a
it?
resonance from someone. And I don't know who this is, actually.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know who this is. And I can tell you that it is someone who is trans. So this person is male, identifies as female.
Okay.
Okay.
So was
So
born
this
male, identifies as female.
identifies as female.
Okay.
Yes. This person is, I'm getting
Okay.
32 years old. And this person, I'm getting Sacramento as a location.
Mhm. As you're saying,
Um,
I'm getting chills. Confirmation, like, yep, that feels right. That feels right. Okay.
okay. So this person is really, really struggling about, you could say, coming out of the closet. And so the money pulse is broken. Money pulse has a break on both the top, it's both at the top and the bottom wave. Okay. It's a small break between both the top and the bottom because they're not being true to who they are.
Mm,
So as long as they're not being true to who they are, they're going to struggle with money. And this is affecting their relationships, it's affecting their health, it's affecting their job, it's affecting everything in their life.
worth, um, self-worth is such an important part of wealth because it
Mm-hmm.
is really our first understanding of what worth is, right? Being worthy
Mm-hmm.
of receiving. And our analytical brain, like we talked about, right, will tell you,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I love it's interesting that a viewer just popped in as we started talking about that. I don't know who it is because I can't see, but just when the whole time there hasn't been anyone live, but someone popped in right as when we started talking about it. So your your self worth is your first experience of wealth, and
Mm-hmm.
um,
Sorry,
all
there's
right.
I think there's construction or something like that is getting ready to
Okay.
happen.
Okay. Hi, Beth.
Or
I see who it is now. Okay. Hi, Beth. How are you? Interesting. She's in California. Maybe you know who this person is, Beth, that we're talking about. This is in a different area, but you said Sacramento was where you were feeling the energy. I
I
don't know
mean,
if
that's where I was feeling the energy. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's where that person is located in right now. It could just mean that that's where like their hub is, like
yeah,
maybe that's where their family is or something else. But I'm getting Sacramento as the location. Like there's some type of a strong connection there with Sacramento.
interesting. So, so so we were talking about like wealth being really central to who we are and being able to receive it, and that logical mind or analytical mind will often tell us, of course I'm worthy of receiving, right? Of course I'm worthy
Hmm.
of um, receiving wealth and receiving money. Why wouldn't I be, right?
Right.
Because we're not taught analytically to believe that we're not
Hmm.
worthy. And yet the actions and our experiences often prove that wrong, right?
Hmm.
Our lived experience shows us that we're not worthy, even though we identify still as being worthy, but we may not have experiences that show us that in alignment with that, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And okay, so let's explore all like I feel like we should expand out from that and see if there's anything else coming in. Maybe it's um, the way that I often receive, I see patterns, right? And
Hmm.
so because we're both in this energy, you're going to get to experience my work and how I work as well. So often, what will happen, especially when I'm doing Oh, wow. Okay, so Beth says, I'm in Utah today. This person I'm thinking of is in Modesto, so very close to Sacramento.
Ah, okay.
So Beth, that does identify, can identify someone that has that energy that Tonya was just talking about. Um, I just love the synchronicity of how she came in right at the time when we were talking about that. Um, so yeah, I generally will see these patterns. And what
Hmm.
happens when I do past life work, for instance, I see it as I would call it other life work rather than past life work because I feel like
Hmm.
my understanding things are happening all at the same time.
Exactly.
That there's another instance, there's another energy that's coming in. It's a different money pulse, but there's a disconnect in a similar way. If I say that, does something drop in for you?
Okay, so if I connect with this person, um, this person was actually a gladiator before. Um,
Is that when she learned to, is that when the pulse was broken?
yes, because she had to cause so much death.
Mm.
She was
What I
the
get,
cause of so much death. She was like, in that lifetime, she was like the star gladiator.
mhm. And so that energy of um, worth, right, came at the
Hmm.
cause of other people's lives. And
Yeah.
what I feel that disconnect is even in like, um,
And that's actually why they're choosing to be trans in this lifetime, because in that lifetime because they were male, they were turned into this killing machine.
mhm,
So in this lifetime, they're exploring being female and not having to be a killing machine. So there's a lot of,
yeah.
but yeah.
It feels like there's this energy of, yeah, and Beth says she's so lost and feeling so unworthy of even friendship right now, lost her job recently, um, which that comes in with the money pulse, right? Like you were talking about,
Hmm.
in order to receive money, being true to who you are. Now, being true to who you are doesn't have anything to do with gender, right? It has to do
No.
with being authentically showing your authentic ways of knowing and being, right? Aligning
Hmm.
with that truth that is,
Yeah.
your consciousness, your analytical mind, your heart mind, your gut mind. And
Hmm.
if that feels out of alignment, which this person or any of us might not understand or know through that analytical mind, that we've had this experience in another lifetime.
Hmm.
What's really fascinating to me, and like I said, I look at patterns, right? My brother in law is from Modesto, and he was I believe he also had a gladiator lifetime as well, where he was a gladiator. And I didn't do this work with him. He worked with another psychic that had shared this with him. But there's a really I feel like there's something energetically in that location as well that like is healing that energy in that area in the land somehow. Um,
Oh, could very well be. Yeah.
I don't know. That's just coming through. And when I think of Modesto, I think of these kind of like rolling hills, right? Like rolling,
Yeah.
the color yellow comes through. And there's a
Mhm.
lot in there symbolically as well, with kind of looking at the energy of that, or the trajectory of that pulse, and also the color, and how yellow is our power center. It's also something that is associated often with wealth, right? Gold, the color gold.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of different ways that this energy comes through. So what I want to ask you now, Tonya, is what do we
Mhm.
do with this information? So we've got this information.
Okay.
There's some synchronicity, right? There's
Mhm.
maybe this person is who you're picking up. Maybe this person represents many people, right?
Oh yeah,
So what do you
definitely.
do? How do you heal the money pulse? How do you mend that break?
Okay. So really it's about, like going into this lifetime and finding that self-worth. When I, like, just for myself, I
Hmm.
had a period of kind of where I hated myself because of stuff that I did in
Hmm.
prior lives. Like in one of my lifetimes, I was this queen and I would torture prisoners,
Hmm.
like horribly torture them. And I could feel how just hearing their screams of pain was like music to my ears. And yet, the me today is looking up on this like, oh my God. I mean, I was just appalled that I
Yeah.
could do something like that I could cause that much pain and suffering. But yet back, during that lifetime, I lived for that pain and suffering. And so I went through this period in this lifetime. I was like, I can't believe I did something like that. I mean, I was like, I was a freaking monster. I was
Hmm.
just this horrible, horrible, horrible person. And I was so appalled that I could do something like that. And I think that is something we have to consider, that we've all been the monster. We have all been the monster. In some lifetime, we've all done that. And the reason why that happens is because we have to be able to love ourselves at our worst, at our absolute worst. We have to be able to love and forgive ourselves at our absolute worst. So even if you don't necessarily know what happened in a prior life, it's still looking up on your circumstance in this lifetime and thinking, okay, what have I done in my worst in this lifetime? Where have I felt the worst about myself in this lifetime? And it's loving you and realizing that's an experience that I had. This is me. This is all of me. And it's calling in all those parts of you, even those parts that you don't necessarily like. And it's calling that to you and saying, you know what? This is me. And I love all parts of me.
Sometimes
Even those
easier
parts,
said than done. However, it
yeah.
is it's not, I think there's a big difference, right, between forgiveness and forgetting. And,
Yes.
what I hear you talking about, or what I'm receiving from you right now, is the energy of forgiveness.
Yes.
And I think that is what loving yourself at your worst is, right? Forgiving
Mhm.
your, whether you call them flaws, whether you call them judgments, bad judgments, good judgments, whatever, how, whatever language you use to explain it, but loving all parts of yourself, even the ones who are capable of doing something that in this moment you find appalling, right? That shows that
Mhm.
there is growth. That shows that there is a desire to align with that highest version of yourself, of that, whatever you would call it, best version of yourself, right?
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that you are forgetting, that you're like, oh, that was no big deal, right? I mean, still,
No.
you
No.
you understand that that's not something that you align with right now. And she says, sorry, I was just reading the comment. She says, I feel like it's shame for bad decisions that has her stuck in not forgiving herself, right? Which is very
Yep.
much in alignment with that gladiator energy. She gives
Mhm.
gifts to others, but not to herself. So I have people, and I feel like this just needs to drop in right now too, that I have people ask me all the time, like, how do you know that that's real, right? Those past life images
Hmm.
that you get. And my answer is always the same. Does it matter? Because if you can learn from it, like I truly believe they are, whether it's a symbolic representation of it or it's something that in physical form actually happened, if it helps you understand something that you're experiencing in your world right now and give you some tools of how to change it, then it doesn't matter, right? Like that's keeping you stuck in that analytical mind and not allowing all of those
Hmm.
other places to come in and support you. So if in this lifetime she's giving and giving and giving, right, where we have an embodiment of that ourselves in our own experiences,
Hmm.
where we feel shame for something that we've done, whether it is in another lifetime, whether it was in another part of our life, in another relationship. If we hold on to that shame and bring it forward with us and continue living that shame over and over and keep over giving, not allowing ourselves to receive love, is that actually changing it? Right? If we give
Yeah.
and give and give and give and give to the point where we exhaust ourselves and crash on the floor, does that change what has happened in the past? No. But can we learn from that and be the person we want to be in every moment that we can moving forward, starting right now? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, for example, the shame, it's really a lot of times you'll hear, people will say, well, release the shame. It's like saying, get rid of the shame, move
Here
it
it is.
away
I'll
from
just
you.
set it down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. And the thing is that's not a good way to do it
Yeah.
because when you do it, you're rejecting a part of yourself, honestly.
Yeah.
So think of that shame as, that's one of your shadows. Okay. You've heard the term love the shadow.
Hmm.
Love the shadow. That's what this means. It's loving that part of you. It's saying, okay, I feel shameful for this. I did this. I made this decision. Maybe the consequences of my decision might have caused this ripple effect that, caused this thing to happen to other people.
Yeah.
But what it is we have to look at everything as an experience. And we have to look at, for whatever reason, I had to make that decision
Hmm.
so that other people could have this certain experience, even if it wasn't necessarily a good one.
Hmm.
Okay, you were the instrument in them having experience that they agreed to have with you. So you were actually an instrument in them getting closer to forgiveness and love because we have all these experiences that are in our energy field. And these experiences, especially the negative ones, what we consider the negative ones,
Hmm.
they create these electromagnetic thought and emotion is electromagnetic. Those electromagnetics get stuck to the soul as a as an energy like a distortion because it's energy distortion, right? And that's what's around you. So those negative experiences that we all have are just coming around us so that way we can heal them. So sometimes we are the instrument in creating a negative experience for someone else. That way it's coming around them and they can be like, oh, I need to take care of this. This is something in my energy field that I need to deal with.
Yeah. Have you
And
it's like if you've ever had a friend who's going through something really challenging, right? And
mm-hmm,
um, you have to go and assist them to just like clean it up, right? Like maybe
mm-hmm,
they got a divorce and they had to go and like clean their stuff out of the house and it's really traumatic, or a parent passed away and same thing, right? Or they had to go and do something that was really hard and you go along to be supportive for them, right? um,
mm-hmm.
it's kind of like that. That's how I see it with the
Yeah,
experiences we have, right? Where
yeah,
we have soul mates, we have soul families, right? People that we, or souls that we travel through these different experiences with, and we role play, right? Different experiences so that we can learn. Like when you're in school, when I was a teacher, we would do role playing quite a lot when there was something that we were trying to really experience and understand. And so being in the shoes of that person, like actually going into that role and pretending this is who I am, trying it on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
understanding it from that perspective is a way to really understand it here rather than just here.
Yes.
Um, and sometimes it is a really uncomfortable experience because that's the doorway to get into understanding what it is that you are attempting to
Mm-hmm.
heal, right?
Yeah. Yes. And so often when we look at the traumatic times of our lives, we're looking only from the human perspective, and that's it. All we see is just our own experience in that, and we're not seeing the bigger picture of it.
Right.
It's when you can get your awareness out to the bigger picture of it, is when it's so much easier to heal.
Yeah.
Because when you're focused just on just that little part of you, and that's all you can see, and all you can see is how you created trauma or how you were traumatized and nothing else,
Yeah.
then it's very, very hard to heal from that.
There's one other thing that's really coming in, and it's just this like, I feel like there's maybe it's somebody who's watching at some point, or maybe I'm just feeling this in the collective, but like um, this idea of, well, then that's just giving people permission to do bad things,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
And
like the way I understand that, I'd love to hear your perspective on it as well, is that that's when we create these karmic experiences that we then have to come back and heal at another
yeah.
time, right?
Hmm.
Whereas there are, I mean, we're creating karmic relationships with people all the time, and those then get exaggerated more or amplified more as they go unhealed, right? As with
Hmm.
any trauma, um, there are moments where we just like, have these big, I call them like acute trauma experiences, right? A car accident, a sudden death, things like that. But we also have these kind of um, subtle traumas that happen, and then I like to think of them like stickers, because or magnets actually is a really great way to do it, because once that initial trauma happens, then our supercomputer brain and our supercomputer gut start looking around for anything that is the same and attracting it in, and then it creates this
Hmm.
kind of this weight, right, that we're carrying around with
Hmm.
us, which if you think of a car, if a car goes out of alignment, right, one of the wheels is out of alignment, it's going to be hard to drive. And so that happens with our bodies too, right? You're talking about that magnet that's spinning and it picks up this thing. And then, like, think about like if your washer goes off balance, right? It's like, and no one, if you've never heard that before, you will know it when you hear it. But that's what happens, right? If there's this thing that's just off balance and it throws your whole life off. So
Hmm.
that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about like go out and consciously do bad things to another person. It's
No.
that is creating karma that then has to be cleared. But
Yeah.
yes, there are these instances where we've picked up some karma and have that relationship, and so we have a soul contract, right, or agreement when we come into this life to say this is the trauma, this is the karma that we're healing, and these are the roles we're going to play to try to do that in.
Hmm. Yeah. Exactly. It goes back to the bus stop analogy. I think I've mentioned that before. You have two souls at the bus stop, and they're talking about, they're planning their next life, and the one soul is saying, I really need to, like really learn true forgiveness. And the one's saying, well, I need to really, really learn, unconditional love.
Yeah.
So one soul says, well, how about if I do this thing to you? So that way, you have to learn how to, forgive me, and I have to learn how to love myself at my worst.
Yeah. So many things.
There are so many things. I mean,
Yeah,
we could go on forever talking about this.
I know we could. So All right, so I know we're out of time, and I do want to talk about, because it's, you and I are going to be exploring this together through the missing link,
Hmm.
and there are 8 wisdom leaders that are coming in to support this container, each one bringing in their specialty, their magic, right, to come in and
Hmm.
support soul guided entrepreneurs through really tuning into the soul of their business, the soul of money, the soul of you know, um, their business soulmates, etc. And so, tell us a little bit about how you're going to bring the work that you do into that program, and then let us know how we can find you if someone wants to work with you. In addition
So
to the missing link.
yes, so yeah, I am going to be talking about the money pulse and how that really affects all parts of our lives. How, if you're having issues with money, those issues with money is the symptom of whatever else is going on in your life. So you have to fix whatever else is going on in your life to fix the money issues. Um, so that's what I'm going to be talking about, and that's what I'm going to be helping people with. If people within, the wisdom, within the missing link want to work with me personally on their money pulse, they can. And if you want to contact me directly, my website is tonyarutter.com. You can, go into my calendar and make an appointment with me.
Okay. And I'll
Yeah.
make sure to put that link in there. I'll put in also the missing link, as well as the your website there as well. So I'll put both
Yeah.
of those URLs in so people can click on those and learn more. And yeah, it's just going to be a beautiful experience all around. And I'm so excited to have you in there and to work on our money pulse together. So if
Hmm.
you're interested in learning more, definitely look up Tonya. Definitely come work with her, and I'd love to have you in the missing link as well, where we'll be digging into this and so much more, and doing it in this really loving, safe container with a beautiful community. So, thank you so much for being here. To everyone who was here today, thank you, Tonya, for being here and sharing your time, your space, and your energy. So,
Thank you so much.
absolutely. All right, everyone, have a beautiful day.